children might be within families, and recognizing that in a financial way, saying to foster families and even adoptive families that here's a child who goes beyond the norm, if you will, in terms of their needs for support and supervision. And several studies that went on back in, I want to say 2006 to 2009, somewhere in that area, or 2005 to 2009, just were real clear about a huge discrepancy between the extra funds that were over and above extra maintenance, let's call it that. It didn't have a really good name because there weren't any really good official names for it back then. But extra maintenance that were being paid to foster parents who were agency-approved parents and foster parents who were treatment foster care parents and foster parents of an agency on the eastern side of the state versus the western versus the northern or southern. It was just all over the map. So there was a desperate need to develop some consistency in that, to develop a system to assess that need and make payments based on a tool that would help us do some measuring of that need. By the same token, the federal government has a rule under what they call the Social Security Act Title 4E that says if you don't have a tool, if you don't have a uniformed way across all of your foster care children's family-based placements, that's a critical piece here, family-based placements, to measure this extra maintenance, which the federal people call enhanced maintenance, then we can't get a federal drawdown from 4E to get reimbursed for some of that, and that's huge. That's big money for the state. So there were several reasons why we got into doing this. Of course, at the same time we were doing this, we were also going through children's services transformation, which is a good thing. I don't mean to impugn any imply any negatives to that, because it gave us an opportunity to take a hard look at what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we came up with some help from other states who've been through some of their own transformations. Maine is the biggest one we went to look for this, the Virginia Children's Services Practice Model, and it's shortened to Virginia's Practice Model here. And actually all 6 of these lines should have that little bullet. That's an editing issue on my part, and you can see that the things that we do and the decisions that we make and the guidance that we put forth and the things that we advocate for need to reflect that we do in fact believe all children and youth deserve a safe environment, and that family and child and youth-driven practice is the way we need to be doing business. That's part of our family engagement. It's what we're doing in our independent living areas, seeking input from literally in the behavioral health field, what's commonly known as the consumer, which is the people we interact with. We absolutely feel best that children do best when they're raised in families, and the more that we read up on trauma-informed care and what children's needs are in terms of stable, loving, nurturing adults, and as that impacts their not just emotional but neurological development, it reinforces that third belief, as well as the fourth one, which is that children and youth need and deserve a permanent family. And in terms of how we get things done, we absolutely set out that partnering with others to support child and family success in a system that's family-focused, child-centered, and community-based. I just want to go back and kind of re-emphasize this issue of partnering with others, because as Kate thanks me for being here, the point of my being here is that we do believe in partnering with others for the support of child and family success, and you are some of the critical people that we partner with, and so it's my it's my pleasure to have this opportunity with you to do that. And we do believe that how we do our work is important as the work we do, and so we do that with integrity. We do that set to a standard, a professional standard, and part of the thinking behind this bullet is that we make decisions based on data that we have. And so since the transformation, we've really beefed up our use of data for decision making, and that's making a big difference in making our efforts more efficient and more effective. The purpose of this presentation this evening and is to help you understand the basis and purpose of what we also call rate structuring. That's a way of talking about what the VMAT does. It structures the rate of enhanced maintenance that we feel the need to give out to help you understand, to know about and understand both the role of the rater and the parent, and the agencies and parents with various responsibilities in the process, not only of conducting a VMAT, but of being someone who receives enhanced maintenance. Can't talk enough about this issue of documentation of relevant information about a child's needs, but I need to kind of tweak that word a little bit, because when we talk about child's needs here, we're really focusing very specifically on that child's needs in your presence and in your home in terms of the additional support and supervision. And if you don't write anything else down that I say tonight, please write down those words, 3 words: documentation and support and supervision, because those are really what the VMAT is about, support and supervision that's required of caretakers, foster and or adoptive parents. And all of this is, of course, geared towards your being, as a resource family, being able to fully participate in this process. So some definitions, some acronyms. I'll try not to use the acronyms too much because it's just not a good idea to do that with people when you're talking to them. But what we try to measure, or what we do measure, I think we do in this assessment, is the amount of additional daily supervision. Which there's those words again: support and supervision. Here is supervision and support. Additional daily supervision is the basis for determining the enhanced maintenance payment for resource parent, if it's needed, and I need to add in there how much it's needed. There are some increased expectations that the agency, for both the agency and the resource parent, implied by a higher score, if you will, on additional daily. And we all know that the VMAT has certain points. So the higher the points is directly correlates with a higher level of support and supervision that the child needs. One of the things that people in local agencies tend to focus on, and it's not completely inappropriate, but it's not the end-all be-all, is child's diagnoses. It's not just about children's diagnoses. That certainly is a kind of corollary and confirming. Those are confirming kinds of things that go on. But the truth of the matter is, the bottom line is the child's need for support and supervision. Okay. So definitions, some basic stuff. What's a foster care maintenance payment? We talk about basic maintenance. You'll hear people talk about it as the board rate. That's a kind of an antiquated term these days. But more like basic maintenance are payments to cover, as you can see there, the cost of food, clothing, sheltering, daily supervision, school supplies, personal incidentals, liability insurance, which is what the department maintains when a child in your care does damage in your home. Reasonable travels to the child's home for visitation, reasonable travel for the child to remain in school in which the child is enrolled at the time of placement. Enhanced maintenance then is, and I'll say this probably a couple of times before this is all over, is in addition to basic maintenance. Okay, so it's although it's often paid in the same check, it is actually a separate amount above and beyond basic maintenance. Okay, to cover, made over and above the basic foster care board rate, and it's based on a requirement for additional daily supervision and support as identified by the VMAC. Okay. There are times when children are who demonstrate behaviors that require additional daily supervision, are placed in an unplanned, unexpected time prior to obtaining maybe adequate information that would allow a VMAT to be conducted and administered, where the agency will say, because we don't have the information and because we recognize this child based on the information we do have, a reasonable evidence, if you will, of, and that's what it talks about in the policy, in the guidance, that a child may be placed with an emergency placement for VMAT purposes, which would, as you probably know, which would make the resource parent eligible for the emergency rate, which is, as I remember it, is equal to 20 points and something in the neighborhood of $1,100. We'll get to that on the chart. I'm a really old guy and I don't remember all of these things all the time, but that's why I have it on a chart. But there is an emergency rate, and it's just about that. And again, the VMAT, we've had that name for a long time, it's put together as trying to explain exactly what this is, the Virginia Enhanced Maintenance Assessment Tool. It's an assessment tool. So, kind of as a recap of some of the things that we've talked about already, that this process of rate structuring ensures that it's the child's needs for additional daily supervision, additional support and supervision that drive the funding for enhanced maintenance payments. And I need to be real clear here that that could mean a reduction in the child's needs could reduce the funding. This is I just want to say right up front that there's just no bones about it. This is a curious kind of business that we're in, because it's one of those odd kinds of situations where the better job you do, the less money that might come in, because as a child heals in the trauma of their life experiences and begins to require less supervision and less support because they're more closely functioning like a typically developing child rather than one who's been injured by their life experiences, their VMAT score could actually go down. And of course, as the VMAT score goes down, the funding goes down. So that's just a reality of the way this thing works, and it's a curious thing to say to people, please work for lower money so that your money will go lower, but it's absolutely the way the system is set up. We need to clearly, I think we've done this already, largely, is improved equity across both the chasm of public and private resource parent payments, so that agency-approved provider, agency-approved resource homes, local agency-approved homes are much more clearly receiving an equitable amount to what treatment foster care parents are receiving. And certainly this is meeting our federal requirements to continue federal funding for maintenance under Title IV-E. So let's get into some details about guidance around 4E, and most of this is quote, pretty close to quote right out of guidance. In guidance, we say that the VMAT shall be used, and I capitalize that on purpose, by the local Department of Social Services. There's an acronym I should have spelled out, Local Department of Social Services, LDSS, for any child in a treatment foster care home. So as local agency use, private providers that are licensed child placing agencies, all of those are licensed child placing agencies, VMAT must be used for those homes. What's not stated there that I need to say, it's a corollary to that, is that local departments of social services have the option to use the VMAT with their locally approved homes. They have the option to do that or to not do that. Some do, some don't. And I don't have a number of how many of those do and don't. I know most recently, since the reduction of 30% for everybody back in October, A couple of agencies have come on board and said because of that reduction, they felt they could use the VMAT for both their agency-approved homes and their TFC homes. But it's a shall for TFC and a may at their discretion for agency-approved homes. And as I mentioned earlier, the second bullet here, there are instances where the enhanced maintenance payment made to foster parents may increase if the child's score goes up, and certainly it's just as possible for it to decrease based on changes in the child's needs. In that sense, in that case, a reduced need. Going to the last bullet. Current policy is, and this may change before too long, although I'm not sure how much it would. VMAT shall be used for a child in adoptive placement at the time the adoption assistance agreement is being negotiated, and the child already has a VMAT in place is basically what that says. So when the child has a VMAT in place, that VMAT will be used in the negotiation of the adoption assistance agreement. It doesn't set the rate for the adoption assistance agreement, but it functions as a benchmark for it, because federal law will not allow us to pay an amount in adoption assistance agreement that's any more than a child would have the ability to make or receive as a benefit if they were in foster care. So you can't pay more for a child who's being adopted than you would if the child remained in foster care. Okay. The organization of the VMAC is fairly straightforward. There are 3 domains, and within each of those domains there are 4 categories. There's an emotional domain. Hold on just a second. These domains have extra labels other than just emotional. So there's on the more recent VMAT, it's called the social emotional care needs domain. There's a behavioral developmental care needs domain, and the last one is physical medical personal care needs domain. These are kind of shorthands for those ones that are written out on the tool itself. And within each of those domains, there are 4 categories within which the tool can be, that each of the domains can be scored. And A, not applicable, would mean that there is absolutely no score for any of these domains, any of these 3 domains, or any individual domain. A minimal score, given at least two characteristics being scored in the minimal range, would result in a score of 4. Two moderates being scored in any one domain would result in a score of 8, and in any one severe level in any of the domains would result in a score of 12. And for a characteristic in a domain to warrant a yes, it needs to be inappropriate for the child's age group and developmental level. And it needs to not be a short-term, recent kind of condition that is just, a short-term reaction to something else going on in the child's environment. I'm not sure that these aren't the greatest examples. I'm sorry, and now that I read these out loud as I talk about them, I want to use other examples. Not that these are inaccurate; these are accurate examples. But other examples might be a child having a short-term reaction to, say, a problematic visit with their parent, a problematic visit with their sibs, something else, getting some bad news about something. It's that the short-term nature wouldn't necessarily trigger the characteristic. The short-term nature of things might prevent a behavior from being a characteristic, turning the characteristic to a yes. And all of these things need some documentation of the frequency, duration, and intensity of the characteristics. 3 more words you might want to write down with the others that we have: frequency, duration, and intensity. Quite frankly, the real challenge of the VMAT, for all its great intents, is this whole quantification piece. It's a very difficult issue, and I don't think we've finished doing the development on this, quite honestly, that we're going to have to keep kind of picking at this to help us get this down as close to kind of common understanding and common skill level to bring more and more consistency to this as we go along. And the use of the term frequency and duration and intensity is really a step towards framing things in ways that are more quantifiable. So that's why those are used there like they are. So talking about those a little bit more, and these are pretty much the common use of these terms. Frequency being the rate of occurrence, or how often an event repeats itself over a period of time, and how long it lasts. This implies like an outburst or a set of problematic behaviors, or something that's going on with a child that requires additional supervision and support, and just how strong, forceful, etc. Is this a huge issue? Is it a minor kind of thing that just needs to be dealt with, or is this something where there's even some urgency or some real serious level of effort that has to be put out to be dealt with? And those are just kind of brackets around the range of things. So as we talk about documentation, and probably now is a good time for me to drop back and talk about that with a little more specificity. FACES organization, and I looked you don't have to respond to this, Kate, but I did look on the website tonight and couldn't find your tool for resource parents to use as a documentation guideline for the VMAT. But it's one I use when I train raters. I give that out when I train local agency staff, and others give it out when they train local agency staff. It's certainly a very good document. The truth of the matter is, in guidance, there is a directive that the resource parents are to use a documentation format that they have discussed with the local agency. So you and your social worker should have a discussion, or should have had a discussion about what that documentation needs to look like for the purposes of your participating, the way you should be able to participate in a VMAT meeting. That in its simplest sense is a log, just a recording, diary kind of thing of how it's going. For some children, that could be as infrequent as a weekly entry. For some children, that might need to be 2 or 3 times a day entry. It's going to differ from child to child. But however it looks, it's something that by intent and of guidance now is something that you should be having a conversation, or should have had a conversation with your social worker about, and some agreement, written or otherwise, that say, we come together and agree that this is the process by which this child's behavior in our home and our subsequent, the need for us to respond to that behavior is being documented on an ongoing basis. So I'll certainly take questions on that at the end here. So, and I've already sent this PowerPoint to, by the way, so you don't really have to take a lot of notes. I've sent this PowerPoint to Kate, and she's certainly welcome to share it with you on her website, and I hope that will happen. I'm sure it will happen. But just to let you know that under the social emotional care needs, the themes under that are listed here. In the first iteration of the VMAT, we had enuresis here, the bedwetting, but we've moved that to the last domain, the physical, medical, personal care needs. One of the things that I haven't written into here, but I would like you all to know about, the VMAT itself has, I haven't counted them, but something in the neighborhood of, let's see, 30, 18, 40, about 56 or 60, somewhere in there, boxes, okay? And even with those boxes, each of them having a little level of description in them, that could never come anywhere near to describing every possible behavior and set of circumstances of a child's needs that you might, as a resource parent, have to react to clearly, which is part of why on the document it says that a child, say for minimum, it says the child must exhibit at least 2 characteristics, and please hear these next words, which include or correspond in extent or degree with the following. That's something I really emphasize, and I pray that the consultants really emphasize, is that the specific behaviors that are in the boxes, described in the boxes on the VMAT, are not all-inclusive, but that they can be representative of other behaviors that also need a specific response that's not something that you would need to do for a typically developing child. So don't feel like when you're doing documentation that you should confine yourself to something that's on this tool. You need to be clear about documenting what you have to do in response to what the child is doing, whether it's on the tool or not. I guess is the best reason for even talking about that here. Again, one of the things I say to local agency staff is that knowing what these themes are, I think, can help them think about the kinds of open-ended questions they may ask you and others who know the child in terms of current functioning and current requirements of yours to support the child and supervise the child adequately. And so this is one of the reasons I made this one up to begin, developed this to begin with, after looking at the various areas in this particular domain. And in the behavioral care needs domain, these are the themes that are there. These are just kind of the big themes that are there. Obviously there are, as you look at those, you can think of, I'm sure, a lot of different specific manifestations of each of these, and with the wording about characteristics which include or correspond in extent or degree with the following, and then the characteristics are laid out. You can imagine there's a lot of variation possible here as things that are important to be responding to and also documenting. And certainly those are true for the physical and personal care needs domain. Physical, medical, and personal care needs domain. Yeah. Okay. So I've talked about the scoring once already. I don't ever think it's exactly horrible to repeat things, because I think that's one of the ways we learn. Each domain may score 4, 8, or 12 points. The thing I didn't talk about earlier is that with the categories of after not applicable, the functional categories of mild, moderate, or minimal. It should be minimal, excuse me, that's another editing issue on my part. Minimal, moderate, or severe. It's the highest category that receives points for the particular domain. So for each domain, and there's an exception to this, for each domain, generally speaking, the potential is for there to be 12 points. And since there's 3 domains, there's a potential most of the time for a maximum of 36 points. Actually, that's true all the time, but maximum of 36 points from 12 points in each domain. The exception here is when basically this is a situation where VMAT is being done on a child that has catastrophic physical needs. And that could be a child with paraplegia, I think it's called, where they aren't able to move arms or legs and need, total care. Children with cerebral palsy, children who have had spinal injuries, etc. Other children with just really severe kinds of conditions who may be non-communicative, have neurological issues, whatever the cause of those things may be. And these conditions apply, that a child presents with the catastrophic needs, and there are no scores in the emotional or behavioral categories because basically the child that we're envisioning here isn't able to respond in those ways, but their physical needs are quite severe. They're 24/7 kind of supervision and care requirements, and with those situations, items checked in severe, not just one item for a total of 12, but in these situations, if there are 2 severe check marks or 3 severe check marks, accordingly the child could receive 36 points in the physical personal care domain alone. There was some quick feedback when we first developed this that we really weren't catching with this tool the level of support and supervision a child with that kind of situation needs without putting this exception in. Okay, so as of October of 2012, October 1, I was right. The emergency placement rate is $1,120, and these are the rates for the other point levels, which hopefully is not a surprise to anybody. That should have been very commonly understood. Okay, some guidance here to the local agencies and about how this is supposed to be done. The VMAT administration is done by a child-specific group or team of individuals who know the child. The team shall include the caregiver, foster or adoptive parents. These are absolutely required to be here. Is a foster adoptive parent, the DSS caseworker, and a trained rater. And really only individuals with knowledge of this child and fairly specific knowledge of the child, their needs and their behaviors are to be invited to the meeting. And quite candidly, some of that wording is to make it clear that this is not a meeting where guardian ad litems are particularly welcome. It's not about a guardian ad litem. It's about a conversation and an assessment with resource parents and therapists and other service care providers about the child's need for additional daily supervision and support. And so that's why those kinds of folks the meeting is limited to those folks who have that specific knowledge. A big issue that's come up recently in people's questions, and again we'll provide this this VMAT this PowerPoint to Kate, and very shortly we're going to be posting VMAT guidance on the public site, so you'll be able to go and get a copy of it there. Within 60 days, so the frequency of administering the VMAT now I need to be real specific here. For those homes that a local agency chooses to use the VMAT in, they have to choose all the treatment foster care homes, and if they choose to do this with agency-approved providers, and as you read guidance, if they have reasonable reasonable information that the child will require a VMAT, in guidance wording it's actually is eligible for a VMAT, which means that they have knowledge that the child has behaviors that will require some type of behaviors that will require additional daily support and supervision, then the VMAT has to be done within 60 days of the child entering the foster home. And up until the point that that VMAT is done, the family would be eligible for an emergency rate at $1,120 a month. The readministration of the VMAT needs to be done at least annually or upon the parent's request. Upon the parent's request is something we'll talk about a little later, and the phrase based on a change in the child's behavior is important when you see that upon the parent's request. Generally, though, the agency cannot schedule VMAT to be re-administered any more frequently than 3 months. Okay, it can, so that the re-administration schedule can be no less than annually and no more frequently than every 3 months. Local agencies have the ability to do some scheduling that would be familiar. You might be familiar with the way FAP sometimes schedule their reviews, what we call higher end placements, like high-end residential, and high-end, that's the code word at times in part for expensive. High-end residential placements might be reviewed every 3 or 6 months, whereas other kinds of services might be more likely to be every 6 months to a year, though I don't think anything at FAP waits a whole year. And local agencies might decide and have the ability to decide that, higher rate VMATs are reviewed more frequently. I don't know what the norm is out there for all the local agencies. We haven't taken a survey to see how that works. What's important about this, though, is that each agency is required to have a protocol, and that protocol needs to be shared with everybody at the table. So you need to be very comfortable in saying to your local agency, what is the schedule for this? How is that schedule determined? Is it different for my child versus another child based on their score, or is it just everybody has it at a set time annually, or a set time every 6 months, or a set time every 3? What is this agency's policy on that? It's also administered in the VMAT's also administered in preparation for adoption assistance agreement negotiation. And again, I'm editing I'm catching these now. I will fix these before we get this posted on the FACES website. Slide 9 is not in this set, but it's referring to other guidance around adoption assistance, and new policy is about to come out on that, so I don't have that in here yet. And like I said, protocols must be shared with foster parents and local licensed child placing agencies. Okay, I mentioned earlier about the parent's request, and here's the guidance about that. Say you have a child and you've had a VMAT and things are going along, and you're all of a sudden something happens with this child, and it's not unusual. This kind of thing goes on, and the child is just in the ebb and flow of their development. All of a sudden the behavior starts to either get much better or much worse, and that keeps going over a period of at least 4 weeks. It used to be 2. It's currently 4. When we first started out, it was 2. After that 4 weeks, that you've documented that increased or decreased level of need, then a request can be made, and it's way before the next scheduled VMAT, and you're feeling like this isn't matching up with the rate that came out of the last VMAT meeting. You have the ability to make a request in writing to have the VMAT re-administered based on behavior change. And when that happens, the agency is required to re-administer that VMAT within 15 business days of their receiving your written request. Keep in mind that technically works out to about 3 weeks. And if the VMAT indicates the enhanced maintenance payment should increase or decrease, any change in that payment will take effect the first day of the following month after the re-administration of the VMAT. We've really found local agencies, it's just a real nightmare with the finances to prorate that amount. So we're pushing, about the only time that happens is when we do an emergency rate in our system now. Everything else is the change takes place on the first day of the following month, after the change is made.
Vernon?
Yes.
Just to make sure I'm clear, on the issue of the VMAC shall be re-administered within 15 business days of the foster parent's written request, is that also applicable to the adoptive parents?
It's a little bit different with adoptive parents.
Okay, then I'll let it go.
And I don't have that right in front of me, but hold on to that, and let's talk about that when I get to questions, and I'll pull up guidance and we'll take a look at it.
Thanks. I just thought it did include adoptive, so I thought I'd add it. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a notification requirement for VMAT meetings. All individuals participating in the meeting need to be given written notice of it, email, fax, or letter, 5 or more business days before the meeting. And if it's a licensed child placing agency, that also needs to go to the licensed child placing agency caseworker. I noticed when I was going over these, preparing for this evening earlier, there is a proviso here. If you and your worker are talking and the worker says, "Hey, I have an opportunity to pull people together next week. Can you be available for and is it okay with you, and can you be available for a VMAT meeting?" and you are perfectly okay with that, then it's perfectly okay for them to go ahead and schedule the meeting. This guidance, this top bullet here is not to, add a structure that's unneeded if it's not, if it's not needed. If you and your worker are comfortable with doing that without the formality of the 5 business days notice, it's fine for you to go ahead and do that. But if that kind of interchange isn't happening when this kind of thing comes up, then the notice by guidance is supposed to be at least 5 or more business days before the meeting. And that notice, as you see at the bottom, it needs to include, kind of a reminder and a checklist of what it is you need to bring and where it's going to be, and date and time and location, all of that, just reasonable kinds of expectations on that we have of the local agency in dealing with this. So when a local agency, and this is an important consideration, when a local agency decides that they're going to make enhanced maintenance payments through use of the VMAT available to their agency-approved homes, then there's some things that they have to do that they might not do. They have to have monthly face-to-face visits with you, and they have to have 24-hour access for foster parents to a caseworker, and a caseworker has to have supervisory backup, so that they have a schedule and a way for a caseworker to be contacted, and that caseworker has a supervisor to confer with on a 24/7, 365 basis. They need to be providing training for foster parents on child-specific needs as appropriate. That needs to be become part of the way they do business, clearly part of the way they do business. They need to keep documentation about that, and clear documentation about the child's needs in terms of assessments and testing and evaluations. They need to, and really the truth is, this list is just good practice. It's just a good way to practice, whether they do it or not, whether they have a child getting VMAT in agency-approved homes or not. So, like informing and preparing all parties, and full disclosure of information regarding children's behaviors, that's just good practice for any agency to be doing. But we've put it in writing and in guidance for this particular situation. By the same token, there are responsibilities that you as resource parents have, that you're assuming responsibility for managing the child's daily supervision and support, and hopefully building and taking every opportunity to build on the child's strengths and progress in the development, and accurately and consistently monitoring and documenting those child's behaviors and your involvement and support, like I said, in a matter that has been discussed and agreed upon between you and the local agency, that you will participate in service planning and follow through with recommendations, and that you'll partner with the LDSS caseworker in the coordination of services needed to care for the child to reduce the chance of disruption. One of the examples of that would be your willingness to take specialized training. So, moving on. Documenting behavior. I thought I had another slide about that last one, but I don't. Documenting behavior. This is really important, and it's not just important. It's good for the VMAT. Quite honestly, it's good practice. It's a good way to practice being a foster parent. It's a good way for the child's team to be. It's almost like data-driven decision making. Your documentation constitutes data that helps everybody in the team make decisions about what's going on, what's working, what's not, what the child's needs are, what needs to be done differently, what needs to be done less, what needs to be done more, etc. So, using that documentation to help make assessments about the child's condition and behaviors, and notifying your worker of additional needs, all of that, kind of collaborating with clinical reports and the requirements that are laid out there, educational reports and our assessment, all of those add to the body knowledge, if you will, of what's going on with the child, and how there's correlation between what's going on with them everywhere else and within the context of their living with you and being under your supervision and care. And wherever we really do, the vision for this is to be a team approach, not adversarial, not a push me, pull me, but a coming together of professionals and adults, and looking at the best information possible, the most accurate information possible is used to the assessment, both written material, from therapists and what have you that corresponds, and quite honestly, the dictation of local agency staff is the other kind of documentation. So as you share with them what's going on, that should be part of what the rater has access to understand, some of the frequency issues, et cetera, et cetera. The team can do these assessments over the phone. I know of some agencies that do that quite regularly, and it seems to work out. It's certainly acceptable. It's just that the goal here is to obtain the best information that is reasonably be available, accurate, and certainly complete. Guidance provides for the discontinuance or suspension of enhanced maintenance payments by the local department when the foster parent doesn't follow through on the requirements as documented in the service plan or does not participate in the VMAT meeting as has been agreed upon. This is one of those pieces of guidance that you hate to have to write, but you just do. Clearly, you know, your work as a foster parent is contingent on your being fully informed on to every degree possible as to what's required by a child and what the support you need to be able to deal with what children present themselves with that maybe somebody didn't know about until it came up in your home. I would think that it would be absolutely the exception, a horrible exception, for this to ever even happen. This is the kind of thing that I feel would only happen where there's just a really serious breakdown in communication between foster parents and local agencies. Documentation is your friend, and it's required. Yeah. Just a kind of a repeat here of our discussion about frequency, duration, and intensity. And it's just not what's going on with the child, but what happened that you had to do in response to that child, or the kinds of behaviors and supervision that you have to provide for a child based on either how problematic their behavior is or how problematic their behavior isn't. You know, as a child grows and heals and comes closer to age-appropriate, typically developing child behaviors, those things need to be documented just as much as, if not more, than behaviors that are those of children who are struggling with their condition and struggling with their circumstances and struggling with their life history. Right after a VMAT, okay, or right after you're informed of the decision of a VMAT, and let me just digress just a titch here about that. One of the things that the VMAT guidance allows for is for the agency to have a session where they do the VMAT rating. And goodness, have I already gone over an hour? Kate, it's 5 after 8? Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was going so long. I'll wrap up. VMAT, the agency has the discretion to do the rating right in front of the team and render a decision. They also have the discretion to hold the VMAT session, gather all the information. The rater can then look back over any of the written information, consider what they've heard, make a decision, and let everybody know about it after, within 5 days. Within 5 days after that decision, if you, as a resource parent, feel like the process wasn't followed correctly, or not all the information was considered appropriately, you can request a review of the decision. This is akin to an appeal, but it's not actually an appeal. It's a review by a higher authority within the department. In this case, the guidance says the local agency director or their designee. It's going to be somebody above the rater. And once you request that review, that has to happen that has to be considered by the local director within 15 business days. The director has the ability to say, to look at what your request is or why you're asking for a review. look over the documentation of the session and make a decision that another assessment needs to be held or doesn't need to be held. The director would not be changing the score based on, they wouldn't be second guessing the rater. They simply have the ability to say, I think everything that went on according to the way it needs to go on, or that it needs to be redone. So that review can take place. If it's decided that a review needs to be done, that would be should be administered within 10 business days of the director's decision. Okay. There's a form on the agency's public website called Request for VMAT Review, and there's another restatement that the new assessments at the discretion of the director or designee, and again, any payment change would be effective the first of the subsequent month. Good. Got to the end. I'm sorry that took so much longer. That's really, I'm sorry this is running so late. So, Kate, questions?
Yeah, no, Vernon, thank you very much. We've got a number of questions, some of which I've, because I was on the VMAC committee, have been able to answer, but I want to make sure that you're able to address all the questions as well, because they need to hear from you. So the first one is, does the enhanced payments have anything to do with the foster parent's skill level or expertise?
There isn't any provision to measure that. No. The answer is generally no to that. It wasn't designed to say that a foster parent would get more because they have a specific training, an advanced degree, et cetera, et cetera. So generally the answer is no.
Okay.
The VMAT is about the specific behaviors and activities that the foster parent needs to engage in to provide a safe, reasonable, caring, nurturing response to the child in their care.
Okay. And the answer that I gave was also no. And what I said was the agency should only be placing children with special needs with families that are properly trained to care for the child. And the VMAT does require documentation that the parent is participating in treatment and therapy as directed by the clinician, and that the parent is providing documents, and they're providing additional supervision to the child based on the child's needs. Okay?
Okay, that works.
Is that acceptable?
Sure.
I want to make sure I'm not telling anybody anything wrong. The next question, which I did not answer, was, do additional and or specific services need to be given with the enhanced payment?
Well, in some ways, the enhanced payment is a recognition that you're already providing. I wouldn't call them services because that's just confusing in a way, but you are, in a real sense. You're providing that, response that keeps children safe and nurtured, and hopefully is guiding for them and in keeping with recommendations of therapists that are saying to you, these are reasonable, helpful ways to respond to a child's needs. So ask the question one more time, because I want to make sure.
They've clarified the question. They're actually trying to find out if they're getting the VMAT for the enhanced support for that they're providing the child, is it also required in order for them to get a VMAT? Does the child have to be getting other special services or additional services in order to qualify?
Again, it's the same answer as is the VMAT based on a foster parent's special training. The VMAT is not set up to measure the services the child are getting away from the home. It's really about what does this child present in the home in terms of their need for support and supervision, and that the foster parent has to respond to. One of the examples that comes up in training when I'm working with local agency staff is that if you have a child that has, and I think about severe medical needs that require say nursing care for long hours during the day, Well, those may be hours that that child doesn't need you as a foster parent because all they, what they need, because the nurse doesn't need you, so to speak. That might be different from a foster parent who does get the training, who is kind of doing things for that child 24/7 that include some medical things that they have the ability to do because of special training, catheter care, respirator care, whatever that might be. So again, it's about your behaviors as a resource parent and what are required, what behaviors and work is required because of the child's needs.
Okay, and then this person has further clarified for us, Vernon, that they have been told that because the foster son who has moderate to severe autism does not qualify for in-home counseling, he does for in-home behavioral therapy, but not in-home counseling, then he does not qualify for them to do a VMAT or an enhanced payment for that family, based upon the fact that he doesn't qualify for in-home counseling.
That's one of those issues that that person might want to have a discussion with someone further up the chain at the agency or even the regional consultant, just to get further clarification of that.
Okay, Jessica, this is Kate, and I will be back in touch with you to talk to you about how we address that issue with you, with maybe the regional specialist or someone, okay? I know you can't respond to me, but I just want to make sure you know that we are listening, okay? Then we have a question here, Vernon. Does the VMAT take into account the extra supervision or support needed for the sibling groups? I think what Sarah is meaning here is because sibling groups need extra care, are they going to be able to get a VMAT simply because there is a sibling group?
That's not addressed in guidance, and that quite honestly would be an agency call.
Okay, so Sarah, if you still have questions on that issue, and for anybody else who still has questions on issues that aren't answered in the webinar, my email is cnewbanks, Newbanks, at F as in Frank, O as in ostrich, V as in Virginia, F as in family.org. You can send me the questions again if you aren't getting your questions answered here, and if we need to further clarify the questions that you're having after this webinar. So, Sarah, I'm not sure in your case if the sibling group has behavioral, developmental, medical, or social needs, or if they're or if you're asking just because they're a sibling group, can you qualify to get the VMAT? And
that's not clear to me either.
Yeah, so if you want to post your question again, Sarah, to get us a little more clarity, we'll try to get to that as well. All right, Vernon. That's not a question for you. That's a training question. Okay, I have a question from a family. We are in a 6-month placement. Can you tell me, is there a regular time of year that the VMAT is reassessed, and how does that work?
No, there's not a regular time of year, at least not in state guidance. The VMAT is, the frequency of the VMAT is scheduled by local agencies. It's at the local agency's discretion, and it's based on local agency protocol. So to answer the question, and I'm not clear what the question is. 6 months placement means the last VMAT was 6 months ago. This may be an agency. The agency can go as long as a year before it has another VMAT. If there are changes in the child's behavior that are documented for more than up to or more than 4 weeks, the family has the ability to ask for readministration based on the change in child's behavior.
And that's regardless of when the VMAT was initially assessed.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And Tracy, if that doesn't answer your questions and you want to get more specific in your question, just repost your question with a little more specificity, okay? All right. How soon after you contact an adoption worker asking for VMAT or enhanced maintenance should you have an answer or a date to have a VMAT, and is it back paid?
The answer to the last part of that question is no. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, payments are not retroactive.
Yeah.
Are you still there, Vernon?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I turned that off. I need to look something up here. You
Okay.
can watch this. There you go. I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think this is why I was asking you that one specific question is how long when you ask how long do they have to get back to you when it's an adoptive parent? And I thought it was 15 days, but it's been a while since I've looked at the policy.
Here's the guidance.
Thank you.
Financial filers may request a change to the existing adoption assistance agreement based on changes in the child's special needs or the family circumstances as directed in adoption assistance guidance. Now, this is not from adoption assistance guidance, so you need to understand that there's an overlapping of two programs here, VMAT programming and adoption assistance programming. And so you can't use this in isolation. You would have to use this in concert with looking at adoption guidance, okay? But generally speaking, if the agency decides that they're going to do a VMAT and they have some discretion in that, then they have quite a while. 75 days is what it reads here.
I know they have 75 days to make a decision, but about the assessment. But that's they have 75 days to even let the family know if they're going to look at it again.
That's what I'm reading here. The LDSS will conduct a VMAT assessment within 75 days of the decision to reassess. Okay. I don't see anything here, and this may be an adoption policy and guidance rather, about that around once you've contacted them, how much time they have to get back to you with the decision. I don't see that here, and I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
All right.
So that would be an adoption policy, and that's available to you on the DSS website.
Okay, Sarah, we will get back to that question, and I will try to, I don't know how to do this exactly. I'll try to see if I can, when I post the webinar, post and answer that question. But in the meantime, if you'll send me an email, I will find out the answer to that for you and get that answer to you.
Kate, I would also invite Sarah to ask the local agency, and if they're not happy with that answer, ask the regional consultant. I mean, that's what they're supposed to be there for.
And it is important in both Tracy's question and Sarah's question, you have made it very clear that the agencies are supposed to provide you with their VMAT protocol. So if you ask them for the VMAT protocol at their agency, because it is different all over the state, they are required to give that to you. But we all know we have to ask nicely.
Yes, thank you. I wouldn't have said that because I know people do that.
That's right. That's right. Another question is that I have never had a discussion with the social worker about logging behaviors as an adoptive parent. We are nearing the finalization date. Our worker with the private agency has recommended journaling behavior issues, etc. Should I be contacting our worker from the DSS to discuss this? We are often in the dark on most issues. These webinars are so informative. Why, thank you very much, Tracy. So what do you say that she should do there, Vernon? And can you see the question?
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's not helpful. Hold on. You're asking me if I can see this. Because
it's a long question. I just want to make sure you could see it.
The answer is my congratulations to the private agency for telling you to do the journaling. That's exactly what you should be doing. And yes, you should be discussing that with your local agency staff person who, it's very possible that they are not as informed about VMAT guidance right this minute as you are. And guidance says that the agency and you should be having the conversation about that journaling. And so please bring it up with them. And and get it real clear that you've talked with them about that. I would even go so far as to, after you have that conversation, write them a confirming letter saying, I understand from our conversation that I'm supposed to do da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That kind of thing. Email or however you communicate normally.
Okay. And one of the things that I would like to recommend to the attendees when it comes to the journaling piece is be careful about journaling things like, the child broke a window today. What you need to be journaling is from the strength perspective of how you have affected the child's behavior. So it's not just the child did this wrong. You need to write in there that we had this sort of an incident, and in responding to it, we did this and it worked successfully. Or we tried this, it didn't work, so we tried something else, it didn't work. We're still at a loss about what to try here. It's very important that you are, when you're journaling, that you are documenting what you are doing. It's not just journaling what the child has done.
Yes.
So I hope that's helpful to some of you who are working on the issue of journaling. The other thing that's really important is in your journal to write down kind of the goals of what you would like to see the child accomplish while they are living with you, so that everybody at the agency knows that you have a goal, that you have an idea of what the best life is going to be for that child and how you're going to help them achieve it, and that you're keeping those things.
I can't hear you, Kate.
I'm sorry.
You're breaking up.
Okay. I don't mean to be breaking up. But there's nothing I can do about it. So I'll just say it again. In your journaling, be sure that at the very beginning of your journal, you are writing down some things about what you like to see for the child in their future and what you would like to see accomplished in the placement to make the child's life better. It's always important for workers to see that you are a strength-based parent and that you are thinking about the child and their future. Did you guys hear that? Did you hear that, Vernon?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the next question is, does the agency have the option to offer VMAT payment to particular agency-approved providers, or do they have to offer VMAT to all agency-approved providers? And here I think the person is meaning the parents.
The agency has the choice to offer enhanced maintenance payments to any agency-approved providers who have a child who let me go here. Hold on just a second. Who is deemed eligible for a VMAT payment, either by virtue of the information they have before the child is placed, or by virtue of the information that's developed about the child after placement. Okay, so hold on.
Charlene, if this is not answering your specific question, please repost your question so I can make sure we're getting it.
So if the question is it fair, who the agency chooses to offer VMAT, an enhanced maintenance payment to, should be based on the child's behaviors and their requirements for support and supervision. Is the answer there? Okay, so I'm sorry.
But what they can't do is they can't say, you, Jim and Sue, we're going to use VMAT on you and for your home and for the child in your home, and you, Donna and Douglas, we're going to use a different tool, or we're going to use the PAP process or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about an arbitrary decision. It's a decision based. If if they offer VMAT, if they offer enhanced maintenance payments for agency-approved providers, it's a determination made on the child's needs for supervision and support only is the way it's supposed to be done.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm looking for that. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I'll wait for you.
No, go ahead. What's the next question?
All right. 1 second here. Let me get to the question piece. Here we go. The next question. Can foster parents request VMAT for the initial or only if one has already been done? So if you have a child who's never had a VMAT and they start having behaviors, can you then request a VMAT?
Yes. If your agency is one that provides payments to, is one whose protocol and policy is to provide enhanced maintenance to agency-approved homes, and you're an agency-approved home, then you're certainly able to submit a request for VMAT administration based on child's behavior. Now, that's a discussion that needs to happen, that needs to begin with your agency the minute you suspect that a child may qualify for an enhanced maintenance payment, not 4 weeks later. Not to say that the agency needs to drop everything and do something just because you suspect it. They need to be informed. It's just a reasonable kind of process for you to say, hey, this child is requiring an awful lot, and from what I understand, is a child who could be eligible for enhanced maintenance, and I'm just letting you know that I'm going to be, that you and I need to talk about what that documentation needs to look like, and as we agree to that, then I'll start using that documentation, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Okay, great. And we did hear back from Charlene Vernon that her question was answered.
Good.
Okay. In regards to receiving additional training to meet the needs of the child, is this required of the primary caregiver, such as the foster mother, or is the training required of the foster couple?
Ideally, the couple. If that's problematic, it's not clear in policy. It doesn't say in policy specific both parents. I think it would be a case-by-case determination between the couple and the agency about what the implications of that were for the child's welfare. It would really be a case-by-case call as far as I can imagine it.
Okay. And now we have a statement with a question at the end. The statement is, the VMAT rate structure is pointed more towards teens than infants or toddlers with special needs. Wording in the VMAT doesn't allow proper scoring for infants and toddlers with severe additional supervision. Will this be modified?
There's not an initiative right now to change the VMAT. That's an interesting observation. It's the first time I've heard that observation, and quite honestly, that may be because I haven't had an opportunity to interact with folks like you, so you need to understand how valuable I consider this to be. So I'd like to know more about that, and if you could just, if that person could document some examples of that and get that to me, that might help us take a step towards making that modification.
Okay, so Peter, if you will send an email to Vernon and I, and if you don't have Vernon's email, I will send.
It's up on the screen now.
Okay, I will forward it if you lose it or anything like that. So just let us know of any examples you have on that particular issue, and we will see what we can let you know. The other thing that has been asked, Vernon, that's not asked here on the screen, is that there are children who only have behavioral issues, and they can be quite catastrophic when having 6 or 7 things marked, and yet there isn't a catastrophic for behavioral or any other of the domains, and that's an issue that we'll be bringing to the next VMAT committee meeting. I just wanted you to know that the question's been asked, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing we need to hear about.
Okay, great. Then basically this other question is, I'm hearing that my foster son qualifies and should have been getting the enhanced payment. He wasn't. So what are his rights and what procedures do I do? I'm guessing that this person has now had the VMAT done, but I don't know. Jessica, you might need to repost your question so we can make sure we're clear. Maybe I'll come back to that question and I'll see if you can repost something to clarify that. The next one was from Peter again, saying at-risk babies 24/7 care are not included in the VMAT. And I think, Peter, that you would find them included under catastrophic for the medical.
Well, you know, this is a place where my discussion, if you have a copy of the VMAT handy or when you put your hands on it, if you look under the definitions of each of the categories, minimal, moderate, and severe, in bold, at the ends of those paragraphs are the words child must exhibit one or two, depending on where you are, of these characteristics which include or correspond in extent or degree with the following. If the rater is looking at that as I believe they should, and certainly as I talk to them about it when I train them about it, then I would suggest that the issue that Peter is describing shouldn't. I can't say that it would make it necessarily completely go away, but should not be the issue that it seemed that I'm hearing that it is. There are times, I suspect, when the wording in the VMAT is taken very literally, and that statement at the head of each of these three columns is a kind of a directive to not take the wording that literally and to be more open to you know, other types similar levels of support and supervision required for other types of similar similar but not exactly the same conditions and behaviors.
So, Peter, I don't know if you're feeling like you're getting your question addressed, but I would like very much if you would let us know and let us know what else you think needs to be included, because when FACES went forward and asked for a redo of the tool and the department agreed to redo the tool, we tried to be sure to include things like the issues of autism, pervasive developmental disorders, those types of things, and to try to make sure that we were very clear about the catastrophic, and the entire committee was very concerned that we would make sure that there would be a specialized category for catastrophic, and I would hope that a worker could place a child under catastrophic risk when they're an at-risk baby needing 24/7 care. So please let us know, as Vernon has suggested, some other examples and things that need to be addressed so we can take that to the next VMAT meeting. Thank you. Okay, Vernon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kate, I want to make sure I'm clear about an answer that I see you've given here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you can see what's on my screen and what I'm looking at, but the answer that you've given here is, then the score is, well, maybe I can go up and see what the question was.
I know which one you're talking about. The person was asking the question, if you're in one domain and you've got a mild rating and you've got a moderate, which one do you get the point value for?
Okay. If you get two characteristics checked yes in moderate and 2 in minimal, you would get 8 points for that domain as opposed to 4. Yes,
right.
He's exactly right. Okay,
right.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Got that.
Thanks.
Other questions?
The children's behavior is all borderline. The children's behavior. Oh! I think this is a clarification from Sarah about the sibling group. I'm not sure, but I think so. The children's behavior is all borderline in being a problem. Because there are 3, we are worn out. That is why we asked the question. They have 3. They have a sibling group of 3. All have borderline issues related to what would be captured in the VMAT, But because there's
Yeah.
3 of them, it's like having,
Yeah.
you know, one that would definitely be a VMAT.
Well, the discussion with the local agency needs to be around, children should be together whenever possible, but there are dynamics that can happen with especially neglected children that can make them clearly the handful, and I know this lady knows what I'm talking about, and I'm very aware of that. And I think those behaviors need to be documented, and that documentation over a period of 4 weeks, and that documentation needs to be shared with the agency, and an argument made for consideration of enhanced maintenance. But I wouldn't wait to have that conversation with them. I start having that conversation with them now about this is what I think, and what I'm going to do is this documentation. And I just want to let you know that I'm seeing these things, and by the way, I'd like us to be looking at ways that the agency can figure out, or other services these children might need in terms of treatment, therapy, family therapy, whatever. To help with this kind of thing, because it's not good for them, et cetera. I mean, all of that needs to be part of a comprehensive discussion with the worker.
Okay, thanks, Vernon. Jessica clarified that the youth that she was talking about, who she's been told qualifies for enhanced maintenance but has never had a VMAT, so she doesn't know what to do now. That now she believes that he should have a VMAT. And I think one of the things we have to be sure is we have to know that agency uses the VMAT for foster care.
For an agency-approved foster care, yes.
Yeah, because not all agencies use the VMAT for foster care.
That's correct.
How many of them do?
I don't have that number.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
All right, so
there are a large number that don't.
Okay, so
that only use it for TFC.
So in Jessica's case, she needs to first figure out if the agency uses VMAT for foster care, and then she needs to get a copy of the protocol so she knows how to request a VMAT. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And she is saying that he was her first placement, and she had, I had bad, no. I'm not sure, because I didn't know, and as I have learned and tried to get the VMAT, I've been turned away and down at least 3 times in the past 18 months. And she's feeling bad. Let's see. Oh, and I feel bad because I don't know, and I have learned and tried to get the VMAT, and I've been turned away 3 times in the past 18 months.
By the local agency, I take it. By the local agency, I take it.
Yes.
Okay.
So what recourse does she have if she keeps getting told no?
I mean, there isn't a recourse per se. There are some other strategies that she might implore. I lost the word there. Sorry, it's been a long day already. That she might try. And the other strategies would be talk up the chain within the agency, in terms of to a supervisor, to a director, to have the discussion with the regional consultant. No guarantees, because the agency really does have a lot, has a fair amount of discretion of interpretation around the eligibility piece for children having a VMAT done.
Jessica, you may have already tried this, but it can't be underscored enough that, as Vernon had said, it's very important to document. So one of the things you might want to try is use the Family's Guide to the VMAT, which is on our website under for caregivers toward the very bottom. I think it's the third to the last item. I double checked to make sure it was there.
Good. Thank you.
And what you might want to do is make sure you're specifically journaling.
You're breaking up again, Kate. Sound like a piano.
Make sure that you're specifically journaling what you're finding out about the child, what you're experiencing, and what you're doing about it, and use the Parents' Guide. ask for a meeting with the worker, show them examples of what is going on and how that's affecting your ability to supervise the child and what else you need. It may be that they need to put some more services also. So that documentation is very important. Ask for a meeting with the worker. If the worker says, I'm not able to make that decision, ask if she would meet with you with her supervisor. So it doesn't look like you're trying to go over her head, and so because you don't want to make workers angry. And then if that doesn't work and the two of them still say no, then ask them, then would you help facilitate a meeting with the director? Because I think that this child really needs additional help. Was that able to be heard, Vernon?
Yeah, I heard.
Okay. All right. So that, whoops, I thought that was the end of it. Let's see. We have a statement from a person who is a worker. Jessica's agency may opt not to do VMAT. I have family that was utilized by another agency that opted not to offer VMAT, and the children she cared for all had special needs and continue to have special needs. If that agency does not use VMAT, there is the option of asking for additional assistance through the FAPT, right, Vernon?
That's a little controversial right now. I'm not going to be able to say I think that's absolutely correct all the time.
But they can ask.
You can ask for anything.
Right, right. But that's the other recourse you have, because agencies can use other methods if they don't use VMAT to increase the services and the maintenance payments.
From local only and state and local money, yes, not from federal money. Yeah,
that's right. All right. I need to leave a write in space, maybe. Oh, Peter was suggesting that maybe there needs to be a write-in space on the VMAT to address the issue of the infants and toddlers, so that they can be more able to capture more information.
If you're going to score things based on characteristics which include or correspond in extent or degree with something that's written there that needs to be documented, yes. I would suggest that we don't need to change the form. People just need to document the process of the administration of the form in a way that shows that a yes was checked, not because it met the literal translation of what's in the box, but that it corresponded in extent or degree to what's in the box. Yeah.
And Vernon,
you're on target. You're on target, Peter. I agree with where you're headed with that.
And Vernon, maybe one of the things that can be done is that the regional specialists do all sorts of training on the VMAT issue. Maybe there is a way at our next VMAT meeting to try to figure out what could be done about enhancing the training around how to use the VMAT with the infants and toddlers. Yeah. And it looks like we've answered Jessica's question, because she has put in here, thank you.
Okay. Good.
And that is, and we have a response from Peter, thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we had two polls that were going on during this webinar. One is asking if the webinar is providing any new information. We're going to now re-poll that question. At the beginning of, in the middle, we got a 32% lots, 58%.
Lost you again, Kate.
Sorry. There's nothing I can do about it.
You should hear what it sounds like.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Okay,
all right,
I got you now.
Okay, so we are re-polling this one question to ask the question about this again. I want to make sure everybody still has my email address, because in that email is when you can send me an email and I will send you a certificate of attendance.
Tell me what that address was? Is?
The email address for FACES?
Yeah. No, for you. It was different. It's an email address. CF